Welcome, everybody, to Dad's Watching Sports. It is Sunday, March the 14th, also known as Pi Day, but more importantly known as Selection Sunday. Thank you so much for checking out Dad's Watching Sports. It is episode 56 of our show. I am Michael Draper. We're broadcasting live. You can check us out on a host of different ways to check out our show. So we're on our Dad's Watching Sports Facebook page. We're on the Off the Ball Network Facebook page. We're streaming live on the Off the Ball Network Twitter feed as well. So you can check us out there if you're checking out the live feed. And thank you so much for doing so. If you are, shoot us a comment, and we would love to get your involvement with the show. We got a really exciting show. Not only are we going to talk about the NCAA Tournament because it's Selection Sunday, but we're going to take you back and go cover what we have kind of crafted as the top 64 moments in NCAA basketball tournament history. We're going to do this over the next couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to getting into that bracket here in just a second. If you're checking out our podcast, thank you so much for doing that. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can check us out anywhere that you find podcasts, and we're excited to do that. And obviously, you can check us out anytime, anywhere on the Off the Ball Network. You can obviously also find us on any social media out there. Again, Selection Sunday, just an awesome time. As you can see, Kyle Castles is not here with me this week, my normal co-host of the show. As you guys, if you checked out our show last week, Kyle mentioned he and his wife and their son Jack are out in LA. Jack's got the severe tree nut allergy, and they're out there doing some more testing. So Kyle, Jack, Lauren, our thoughts and prayers are up with you guys, and hopefully you guys have a good week. I know it's going to be a tough one, but we definitely look forward to hearing about that come next week. But pinch hitting for Kyle, and someone that I know is going to have a lot more interesting things to say, is Jeff Hunt. And Jeff, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Once again, I'm honored to step in and to be a part of the show, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, we're glad that you're a part of it, and glad to have you on. It's Selection Sunday. It's one of the best days of the year. We're coming up on what's going to be an awesome couple of weeks here as teams will convene in Indianapolis, and we're going to have an NCAA tournament, which is something we did not get to have last year. We talked about that before the show. So how pumped are you for us to be talking about a bracket on Selection Sunday once again?
No, you're right. I'm really excited about it. We all know the story. It's been a year. It's been a year since everything just our world come unraveled as far as sports fans, as far as real people too. And it's this is the one event that really got canceled. This is the one event that we missed last year, even in any capacity whatsoever. So, like I said to you when you had me on, I'm like, I can't believe it's been 2 years in the making. But it's exciting. It's really exciting.
It is. I think it really kind of hit me today when I was finishing up watching some of the conference championship games, and then they said, coming up next, the selection show. And I was like, oh, here we are. It's finally back. And yes, it's going to be weird, and we may have teams that test positive and have to opt out. But at the end of the day, we're going to have that kind of, the first and second round feel. We're going to have a champion crown. We're going to have a Final Four, and I cannot wait. I'm repping my 2014 Final Four T-shirt in reference to that year. Kentucky ended up facing UConn, and the Huskies got the best of the Wildcats again. They seem to do that every year in the tournament. But we're going to talk plenty about the tournament. And if you guys happen to check out some of the other guys on Off the Ball Network, they had a tourney time showed right before this. And if you haven't had a chance to go back and check that out as they kind of break down matchup by matchup. We're not going to do all that on our show tonight. But before we do get into our next bracket that we're going to talk about, let's talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament for this year, 2021. What are just kind of the bracket came out. We saw who made it, who didn't, where people were seated, et cetera. what are some of your initial thoughts on the tournament? And we'll talk a little bit about snubs and all that here in just a second.
Right. Well, initial thoughts were, I obviously I live in Big Ten country. I'm not just a Big Ten fan, but it was pretty wild to see, how successful a year they've had, and how strong they're going into the tournament. Obviously, Gonzaga is the story. There's no question about it. Like you can't deny it. But I've, I'm an older guy, and every year this gets more true. The difference between, 60, I guess now 66 teams or however many actually get in it, but we'll say the 64 team and the number one team gets narrower. It gets tighter every year. And we've learned that, we had a number one seed go down. I keep wanting to say last year. It wasn't last year because we didn't have it last year. But so that's the biggest thing that jumps out to me is that, like, when you're trying to pick them, you're like, it's not, you can't just go down through and eliminate, the first 32 teams and then start your bracket anymore. Like, you have to really look at every team in the tournament now and whether you can, live or die by that. I'm a High State fan. I watched High State Illinois today. Illinois is really good. And Michigan's really good. And then I'm like, well, Ohio State is right there with them. So where do I put them as a fan and as somebody filling out a bracket? Like, how good are they? It just depends on how much stock you put into those conference tournaments. So really everything is just like, it's just scrunched together now. Like the there's not much difference between 64 and 1. I guess that's the overall topic for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that I'm going to be really interested to see is, I think something that will play into that a little bit is, normally when you've had a 16 versus a 1, 15 versus a 2, et cetera, the fans of the teams that are also playing in that arena start to rally up for the underdog. We're probably not going to have a whole lot of that this year because there's not going to be a lot of fans in the stands. And so will the better teams prevail because they don't have this, I guess, home court advantage against them, going in that. So that'll be interesting to see. We didn't see a whole lot in the conference tournament because we had some upsets in the conference tournament. So, but it'll be really interesting to see because normally, if you've got Kansas and Kentucky and Duke and a few other teams playing in an arena, but you've also got some upsets. Well, all the Kansas and Kentucky fans are cheering against Duke, along with the team. So that'll just kind of be really interesting to see how that all plays out. As you look across the bracket, we talk about this every single year when the Selection Sunday of who got snubbed, who didn't get in, who should have been on that was on the bubble, who should have gotten in, who should not have. A team that I've got as a snub, I think kind of right off the bat, and that they didn't really get a whole lot of publicity throughout the selection shows that I saw was Belmont. Belmont's not a high Division I team, but they ran the table almost in their conference. I think they had 4 losses total. They had some really good wins throughout the season. They just happened to get beat in their conference championship game, and they're a team that has proven in NCAA tournaments before that they can knock off some of the big boys. So I was kind of surprised to see Belmont not make it, even though they would have had to get an at-large bid. What about you from your perspective? Any snubs out there that you thought?
Oh man, that's a tough one. As far as snubs, you see, I'm a big conference guy. Like, I don't want to call like snubs, but like when you don't see the blue blood, so to speak, like, we've talked about, it's always weird because like, they have the athletes and it's just like college football. I'm a college football guy. Like everybody wants the lower teams in, but you're like, probably a good team that lost 3 games might be better than a 0-loss team. Like, you talk about a Belmont, and I'm like, I don't know. Do we let another Big Ten team in? Do we let another ACC team in? That's always the problem, with the tournament. So as far as snubs, like, Belmont's good pick. I don't know exactly snubs, but it's just like, I'm always like, I'm always torn between, do we let more of the big conference teams in, or do we let everybody have a chance? I know it's funner, it's always fun to watch, the mid majors or whatever. And then once it gets down to Sweet 16, then everybody's like, oh no, I'd rather have, Duke, UNC, Kentucky. I just always force them into it. So it's always that's always a question of it. So as far as snubs, I guess I don't have a specific team. It's just I wonder if the big conferences got snubbed, or not. Who knows?
We'll find out in just a matter of days.
Exactly.
So along those lines, Who do you have as kind of maybe some first round matchups that somebody should be on upset alert? And do you have have you kind of looked across the bracket and say, okay, I think this is the team that I feel like could be a Cinderella team making a deep run that people might not be on the lookout?
I don't know about Cinderella, but I'm always look out for the West Coast teams like Oregon, Oregon's in there to 7 seed, and it's just like, it's Oregon, whatever. But I'm like, for some reason, just, it's just like with football, once again, like the SEC always gets like the benefit of the doubt, like the Pac-12 teams or whatever in basketball just always get overlooked. And then, but they can be really good. A Virginia Tech team versus Florida, it's, 10 seeds are always going to win. A 12 seed's always going to win. As far as the 12 seeds, you're going to have at least one of them win every year. But I would say that's the biggest thing as far as like, I don't, as far as Cinderella team, I don't know. I've got a soft spot for Arkansas. I don't know why that is. I thought they would win one more game in the conference tournament than they did, but whatever. Syracuse is always a tough out in the tournament. And I know it's weird to call them a Cinderella, but if you're going to give them the 11 seed, then, I'm going to take the 11 seed. I don't want to play the Cinderella or Syracuse team as an 11 seed. So, sure. That's another one. I guess I don't know. It's so weird. Like I'm trying to, just like you, like we've had an hour here or so to wrap our head around it. Right. Of course I'm from Ohio. I've got a soft spot for Cleveland State. And then they get a matchup versus Houston. And now Houston's a really good team, but like if you're Cleveland State and you're trying to pull off a huge upset as a 15, you get Houston instead of like, I just talked about UNC or Duke or somebody. So, Cleveland State's a team that all of a sudden we can see them in the Sweet 16 and be like, what happened here? I have no idea. So,
well, you must have been looking at my pre-show notes because I've got for my first round upset alert, I've got two seeds on upset alert. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just saying, watch out. This could be closer. The first one is Houston. I'm a big fan of Cleveland State. I watched
I don't feel as bad now.
I watched the Horizon League tournament, a lot of it actually last week, and they're good. They are really good. They're actually my Cinderella. I do have them going to the Sweet 16. Beating Houston,
I feel better.
And Rutgers
now.
Yeah, no, they're good. Trey Gomillion there, the lead guard for them is a terrific player. So watch out for Cleveland State. And then I'm going to throw this one in, and for a couple of reasons, Iona and Alabama. And Alabama has been really, really good this year. They won the SEC regular season. They won the SEC tournament. But Alabama is one of those teams that when they're hot, they're really hard to beat. But when they're not, they are very beatable. And
yes,
there are not too many coaches in the country that I think are better coaches than Rick Pitino. He's done it now 5 times, taking teams to the NCAA tournament. He is at Iona. So watch out, Bama fans. I earlier on in the season, I said to someone, I said, Alabama will lose within the first weekend, maybe not the first round, but within the first weekend of the tournament. I'm going to stand by that. And I'm going to say, watch out for Iona and Rick Pitino back at it again.
That's a great pick. You don't want to play a great coach, that's not the team you want in that situation. That's a very good point. Yeah.
And Rick he's somebody that's been there and done it at every level. So it's definitely something to watch out for. Okay, so if you're looking over, and we're not going to hold you to this long term, but if you had to look over the bracket, just kind of initially here, initial Final Four picks, who are you thinking?
I'm sticking with Gonzaga. I think they've done everything that they can do to prove that they're a Final Four team. I think we're past the point of, betting against Gonzaga, because they're Gonzaga. It just doesn't make any sense. Honestly, and it pains me to say, I don't see how Michigan doesn't make it there. I've watched them 3 times this year. We played them. By the way, we went 2-1. But 3 times this year, I've saw them. And like when you look at their path, it's pretty I don't know. There's not a lot of, trap games in their way. So I guess Gonzaga and Michigan. On the other side, Baylor, I have the least confidence in. I don't know why that is. Just something about that. So I don't want to pick Ohio State to go to the Final Four because it's. I don't want to get my hopes up like that.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, like, they have a good chance to do it. But I'm going to take Arkansas. I got a crazy Arkansas. I touched on it just a minute ago. A crazy Arkansas pick. And then Illinois, I think Illinois is absolutely going. And that's another reason I can't take Ohio State. There's zero chance 3 Big Ten teams are going to the Final Four, even though I do like how they spread them out. Like the one thing I didn't want was them to match them up. So they've given them every chance in the world to get as far as they can. So, but I think Illinois is going also.
Illinois is a great team. I watched almost every bit of that game this afternoon between them and Ohio State, and Illinois is good. They can score the ball. They got really good guards.
They got size. They got guards. That's what you do in the tournament.
Yep, and they've got experience too, and so they'll be right there. I'm going a little bit different route now. I do have 2 of the teams that you picked. I do have Gonzaga and Baylor. I think those are the 2 teams that have kind of been at the forefront all year long. Baylor has kind of taken a little dip over the past couple of weeks, and they dealt with a lot of COVID issues, but I think they finally meet up, and I actually think that they're going to make it to the national championship and have that game that we should have had. I guess it was 2 months ago. They were supposed to play each other. It got canceled due to COVID, and now I think we'll get that in the national championship game. But I do think in the other 2 brackets, I've got Florida State. I know they lost to Georgia Tech.
Eye on them.
I know they lost to Georgia Tech in the conference championship game, but man, they are good. They play solid defense. Leonard Hamilton is one of the best coaches in the country, and I think he's overdue on the Final Four. So I'm going to have the Seminoles knocking off Michigan and then going on to the Final Four. And then in that last bracket, I actually made a pick for this team at the beginning of the season, so I'm going to stick with them. I'm a huge fan of Bob Huggins, and so I'm going West Virginia to pull a couple of upsets and make a run and go to the Final Four. So I've got the Zags, the Seminoles, Baylor, and West Virginia, with Baylor and Gonzaga finally meeting up for the national championship, and I'll save my pick maybe for a later show. But that's my Final Four.
Wow, that's all a Baylor Gonzaga national championship. That's wild. I apologize for my dog.
No, you're good.
I'll take commercial break. I'll take care of it. Yeah.
No, that's fine. And I think it would be exciting to see those teams kind of square off. So, well, speaking of commercial breaks, we're going to take one, and when we come back, we're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to go from talking about this year's NCAA tournament to tournaments of years past. We put together a 64 moment bracket, the top 64 moments of NCAA tournament history. And we're going to touch through that and go through the round of 32 when we get back on Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all stick with us, and we want to hear from you. We want your feedback on this bracket. We'll be right back. Big news in the Dad's Watching Sports podcasting world. You've heard us mention it on the show already. We are now part of the Off the Ball Podcast Network. We're super excited to be joining the team of great shows, hopefully adding a little dad flavor to the mix. You can check out Off the Ball Podcast and Off the Ball Network on all your social media sites. Just search Off the Ball Network. And while you're there, give them a like and a follow. You won't regret it. Welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. It is Selection Sunday, March 14th, 2021. Michael Draper and Jeff Hunt. Kyle Castle's out this week. Kyle, we'll see you again next week, sir. Jeff, we just got through talking about this year's NCAA tournament. Well, over the course of the past couple of weeks, I'd been kind of tossing around some ideas, and I thought, we like to do brackets on this show. And I thought, what would be a really cool bracket is to come up with the top 64 moments in college basketball or NCAA tournament history. And we put a lot of work into figuring out, okay, what were those moments? I did a lot of Googling and it just a lot of thinking back on my mind of what were some of those iconic moments. And so what we did is we put together a 64 team bracket. And I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. It might be a little hard for you to read if you're checking this out on the live stream, but here is our 64 team bracket. We had 4 different regions and they were kind of named after the number 1 seed. So the number 1 seeds were NC State / Jimmy V when they won the title, and Jimmy V's running around the court looking for somebody to hug. Villanova and Chris Jenkins, 2016, he hits the game-winning three-pointer as time expires to beat North Carolina. UMBC, the number 16 seed, the only time in history a 16 has beaten a 1. They beat Virginia a couple of years ago. They were a number 1 seed. And then Christian Laettner, obviously, what is widely known as the biggest shot in college basketball history when he hit the shot against Kentucky to send Duke to the Final Four. So those were the 4 number 1 seeds. We put the 64 bracket out there, and we put it on Twitter, and we had fans vote for the first round to get us down to 32. So, Jeff, you and I will be going through the round of 32.
Awesome.
To figure out who is the top 16 best moments in the NCAA tournament history. So we are going to start in the Jimmy V bracket. And so we've got the number 1 seed. And so what we'll do is I'll go through each matchup. You'll give your vote, or I'll give my vote, or vice versa. We have a tiebreaker. My co-host Kyle Castles made all of his picks beforehand. So we do have a tiebreaker vote in the event that we are tied. But we'll go through that, and we'll just kind of go through these brackets and get us down to our Sweet 16. So
I'm so excited about this. This is an awesome bracket. Like and here's I've told people time and time again. The one advantage to being, my age is that I've literally seen, almost all of these moments. So like I have an actual, whether it's clouded or whatever, I have a memory, of these things. This is a great bracket, man. I'm glad to be on.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very glad for you to join us. All right. So the very first matchup to go to the Sweet 16, we've got the 1983 national champion, NC State, Jimmy V. They beat Houston, the fly slam-a-jamma with Hakeem and Clyde.
It's unbelievable.
Charles gets the dunk at the buzzer to win it. So they are going up against the 2012-2013 Florida Gulf Coast team that was the first ever 15 seed to make the Sweet 16. They beat Georgetown and then San Diego State. So I'll toss it to you first. Who do you have in that matchup?
This is a tough one, man, because that Dunk City team was I can go back and look at my tweets from that, and I can't believe it's been that long ago now, the Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
But it was one of the funnest runs that I've ever seen a team go on. Like, there's no way to describe, the type of basketball that they played as far as, just fast-paced and moving and, all of that. But I still got to go with the 1 seed you got there. I got to go with North Carolina State and Jimmy V. That was an historic game. I was I was 8 years old when that happened. I kind of was brought up on that memory. I remember Jimmy V was still coaching when I started watching college basketball. Jimmy V was still coaching. Then he went into commentating. So that's one of the sounds. So nostalgia purposes, I'm still going with the 1 seed. I'm going with Jimmy V.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think it's just one of those iconic moments in college basketball. So I go with NC State, and Kyle also voted for that as well. We're going to go down to the 5-4 matchup. It was 1995, Tyus Edney, UCLA Bruins versus Missouri. Drives the length of the court, lays it in. UCLA was the defending national champion. They escaped in the first round to win that game. And then they're going up against the 4 seed, which was George Mason. If you remember 2011, George Mason was an 2006, George Mason was an 11 seed. They beat Michigan State, North Carolina, Wichita State, and UConn on the way to the Final Four, where they lost to eventual champion Florida. Tyus Edney or George Mason?
This is a great one. I love that Tyus Edney shot. I think there was just under 3 seconds left. He takes, everybody's waiting for him to stop and pull up or kick it out or whatever. And he just drives in, takes the layup. I like Tyus Edney, the way he played. And once again, that's one of those that really sticks in my head of that he kind of set the stage for you don't always have to lob it in and take, a full court shot. You can dribble the ball. But I'm going to go with that George Mason team because that was one of the toughest schedules, in NCAA tournament history that they ran to get to that Final Four that year. So I'm going with the 4 seed George Mason on this one.
All right, I'm going Tyus Edney because I'm just a huge fan of the buzzer beater. I mean, I think anytime,
absolutely,
it's such an exciting moment in sports. So I'm going Tyus Edney, and I will pull up. Let's see, who did Kyle vote for here to break the tie? Kyle goes George Mason. So George Mason. Moving on to the Sweet 16, the 4 seed will end up facing the 1 seed NC State. All right, now we're going to what is now the 14 versus the 6. So the 14 seed with an upset in the first round over the 3 seed. The 3 seed was Indiana going undefeated. I'm not sure how that lost in the first round, but
yeah, that's interesting.
The 14 seed is the 1985 national championship game. 1984 national championship game between Georgetown and the before mentioned Houston Cougars. It was Ewing versus Hakeem. And what even in the NBA was 2 of the greatest centers of all time. They matched up here in college basketball. So we've got that matchup going up against the 6 seed, which is Lehigh High beating Duke. They faced off in, I believe it was in 2012, and they were the 15 seed beating the number 2 ranked Duke Blue Devils. Who you got in that game?
This is a tough one. As much as I despise Duke, most of, modern thinking people do. That was a great moment, but it didn't stick with me. Like when, even when I saw this, I'm like, oh yeah, that was great. So at the moment, that was fantastic. But we're talking Ewing versus Hakeem. Hakeem Olajuwon is one of my favorite players of all time. Him not winning a national championship in those couple years of Phi Slama Jama, him and Clyde Drexler, still is wild to me. And then, obviously they both went on to these historic NBA careers. So I'm taking Ewing versus Hakeem because I think that you just don't get that matchup very often as to where Lehigh Duke, if it's not Duke and you insert another, 2 seed in there, I don't know if it has the same, stick to itiveness. So I'm going Ewing Hakeem on that one. It's just crazy. It's a huge upset for a 14 seed, but I'm going with them.
It is, and I'm going with them as well. I think I'm like you. Anytime Duke loses, it's awesome. But this is one of those games that just didn't really stick out. I don't think that Duke team was going to win the title, so it wasn't a huge upset. So I'm going with it as well. I think it's just a monumental matchup, and I think seeing what they've done throughout their careers, and in the NBA as well, just gives it that much more of a history. All right, we'll go to the 7 seed versus the 2 seed. So the 7 seed, this is one that absolutely breaks my heart still to this day, is 2015. You've got 38-0 University of Kentucky Wildcats in the Final Four playing Wisconsin, the team that Kentucky beat the year before in the Final Four. And Wisconsin gets the ultimate revenge, knocks off Kentucky, goes on to lose to Duke in the national championship game. So that's the 7 seed against the 2 seed. And this is another one of those great matchups of college players that became great pros. Magic and Bird, 1979, Indiana State, Michigan State. I'm going to vote first. And
go ahead.
I can't allow this memory to continue on of Wisconsin 2015 over Kentucky. So I am voting for Magic and Bird. Again, you got these 2 icons in basketball. We didn't know it at that time. We knew they were great. But they went on to obviously have Hall of Fame careers both in the collegiate level and in the NBA. And it was just such a great game. Indiana State making the national championship game, which is kind of unheard of. So I'm going Magic and Bird, the 2 seed. Who you have?
No, for the same reason, man. I'm with you. Like, I'm not, I'm a High State fan, so I dislike those Wisconsin teams very much.
Yep.
Even though it's basketball, like they still bothered me. I think that was a Frank Kaminsky, teams or whatever. Yeah. So, and then Magic versus Bird, like I was raised on that. Like that was, that was a choice I had to make. I was a Magic guy, by the way, but that was something I was raised on. It changed the way you looked at basketball, changed the way you talked about basketball, changed the way we talked about the NCAA tournament. So without a doubt, I've got the number 2 seed, Magic versus Bird. Moving on.
All right, they're moving on. All right, let's. That's the last matchup of that region. So we're going to shift gears to the Christian Laettner region, which is the bottom right region here, and we'll go with the 1 seed. It's the Laettner shot. That is obviously 1992 Duke versus Kentucky. It is going up against Steph Curry. So in 2008, Steph Curry, led Davidson to the NCAA tournament. Just listen to these numbers he put up. Gonzaga in the first round, 40 points for Steph. Georgetown in the second round, 37 for Steph. Wisconsin in the third round, 37. They won all those games. They end up losing to eventual national champion Kansas by 2 points. So you go in Laettner's shot or Curry kind of breaking on the scene in 2008.
Man, that is a tough one because you make it like just when you put out the stats here. I remember watching this, and it's weird to we knew what we were seeing when it was happening, even though we had obviously zero idea Steph would be the Steph that we have now. Right. Nobody could have told me when I was watching this Davidson run that Steph was going to be a Hall of Fame historic NBA player, but what he was doing at his size and the way he did it was revolutionary. But that's a different conversation. The fact of the matter is Laettner's shot, as much as I despise the guy, as much as every time I see it, I want it to not go in. I'm sorry, but Laettner's shot still has to move on. It's iconic. I don't know what to do with it.
I know. Is Laettner the most hated college basketball player of all time?
Absolutely. He absolutely has to be. I'm roughly, that age bracket. And yes, I mean, he is top 10 most hated. And once again, when we talk about hated sports wise athlete of all time without a doubt. I just, to this day, I want him to miss that shot. I want him to go away. But the fact of the matter is that that was an overall great game. That game, from start to finish. Why you don't guard the inbounder, I have zero clue. But they didn't, and he made the shot, and he took the dribble, and it's history, unfortunately. But he has to move on. Even though I despise it.
I completely agree with everything you just said. So I'm gonna move Leitner on and hope to never speak of his name again. But he's moving on. Okay, we're gonna go to the next matchup. We've got and a little bit of a upset. We've got the 12 seed. This is if you don't really remember this, if you're not a basketball fan of the 90s, this is a kind of an iconic moment. We talked about Michigan State making the Final Four in 1979 with Magic Johnson. Well, they didn't go back until 1999, and that was when they were led by Mateen Cleaves, Mo Peterson and company. And at the end of the game, I forgot even who they were playing to go to the Final Four. Mateen Cleaves kind of starts doing this little shuffle and little, shimmy. And it kind of became an iconic moment for that tournament. So that's the 12 seed against the 4 seed, who I'm sure everybody will remember this in 2011. Kemba Walker just going on a scorcher, leading UConn all the way through the Big East tournament and then all the way through the NCAA tournament, winning the title as a 3 seed over, I believe it was Butler in the championship game. I'm going to go first. I've got to go Kemba. I was a big fan of Mateen Cleaves. Seemed like a great guy. Was a great ambassador for basketball. But there is from a single player standpoint, I've yet to see anybody carry their team like Kemba Walker did during that stretch. So I got to go Kemba. What do you got?
That is a great argument, and I agree. I'm going to take Mateen Cleaves, and this isn't totally fair, but only because that Michigan State versus Florida game and that championship, and I know this isn't exactly who's in the tournament, but it was still one of the most dominant sports performances I've ever seen in my entire life. If you go back and watch that game, it was just from tip off to the end of that championship game for that Michigan State team was totally dominant, and they did it. So I'm going to go with Mateen Cleaves. I'm going to go with the 12 seed on this one.
Nice. Let's see who Kyle picked here. Kyle picked Mateen Cleaves as well. So Mateen Cleaves and the Spartans
show together, but we're always on the same.
I know you guys are feeling the love there. So Mateen Cleaves moving on to the round of 16. Who would have thought it? Maybe we could get Mateen on the show in a couple of weeks and let him
try that,
reenact his little dance there. Ooh. All right, now let's go to the next matchup. It's the 3 versus the 6 as they went chalk in this round, this part of the region. You've got 1998, Bryce Drew hits the game winner for Valparaiso against Ole Miss. Really iconic shot. Is a great play. They throw it to midcourt. The center turns, dumps it off to Drew, and he drains the 3. Great play. I also hate Ole Miss, so it was nice to see the Rebels lose. They're going up against what I believe is the 6 seed. Yes, and that is Illinois. It was 2005. Illinois down 14 points with 3 minutes and 20 seconds left in the game to Arizona. D. Brown, Darren Williams, and company make the huge comeback. They go to the Final Four. They play UNC and lose in the national championship game. Who you got, Bryce Drew or D. Brown and Darren Williams with a huge comeback?
I'm just going to go with my gut on this one. I'm going with Bryce Drew. That was still one of the most I believe his dad was Homer Drew, was the coach of the team at the time. It was one of the perfect plays. And the reason I go with it wasn't a luck play. Like, it was a drawn up, design play, and he made the shot to carry on. I'm actually surprised in the first round that he got past Tate George, but that's another, that's just, it happens. Yeah. It's one of those things, like, you look at it now and you're like, how'd they get here? But I'm going with Bryce Drew because that still sticks as a iconic shot in NCAA history. So, and that Illinois team was good. They bothered me, so maybe that's part of it. Being entrenched in this part of the country, but Bryce Drew for me.
Absolutely, I'm going Bryce Drew again. That's one of the. I mean, I some of my earliest basketball memories are like 90 to 91, 92. But in terms of really, really, really paying attention to the NCAA tournament, 98 was really the first season. Again, a Kentucky fan, we won the championship that year, but seeing him do that and knock off Ole Miss, which is a team that I just can't stand, it was awesome. So I'm going Bryce Drew as well. All right, the last matchup in this region to go to the Sweet 16, we've got 2010 Butler. So they made a run to the Final Four. They beat Syracuse. They beat Kansas State. They beat Michigan State. They ended up losing to Duke on a championship game where Gordon Hayward's half-court 3 just barely missed. or we would have been talking about a Butler National Championship. So they are the 7 seed, and they're going up against the 2 seed in this bracket, which is Texas Western, the 1955 Texas Western team that had the all-black starting 5. They end up beating Kentucky in the national championship game. They made the movie Glory Road that's about that story. I'm going to go first. And when you make a movie about it and it's something that's so impactful that ended up happening, I've got to go Texas Western. So I'm moving them on. Do you agree with that? Or are you going Butler's?
I totally agree. That Texas Western team, which became UTEP, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So like a lot of people think like that college didn't go anywhere. They just changed their name. So that's right. What they did and to go up against Kentucky, it's hard to explain the impact that had, but yeah, absolutely. I got Texas Western all the way. As good as that Butler team was and the run was, you cannot it's going to be hard to knock that Texas Western team out of this because of if you love basketball, how important that was to the sport. So, but I'm going to take definitely without a doubt Texas Western.
All right, so we got them moving on. So that region, we've got Leitner's Shot, the 1 seed versus Mateen Cleaves, the 12 seed, which I'm very excited about. And then we've got the 2 versus the 3, Texas Western versus Bryce Drew. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we will finish up the last 2 regions and get us down to a Sweet 16. We'll be right back on Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all stick with us. Coming up next week on Dad's Watching Sports, Kyle Castles is back, and the dads go through the March Madness Moments bracket as we get you down to the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8, and we'll talk all about what's actually going on in this year's NCAA Tournament. All that and more on next week's episode 57 of Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you next week. And we're back here on Dad's Watching Sports. Jeff Hunt and Michael Draper. We're talking the top moments in NCAA tournament history. It's Selection Sunday. We've talked a little bit about this year's bracket. If you haven't already done so, find the Off the Ball Network Facebook page and Twitter feed. Go back and see the guys talking. It was Tourney Time Talk earlier this evening. Once the bracket came out, they went through and broke down all the matchups and gave some upset alert picks and all that. So make sure you go back and check that out as well. Jeff, before we get into the last part of the bracket, quickly give our listeners a little update on what you've got going on in your world and with your podcast, and then also about the Off the Ball Network.
Yeah, it's pretty wild right now. I do Jeff Needs Sports. It's part of Off the Ball Network. The Off the Ball Network right now, things are like exploding. We're loving having Dads Watching Sports as part of it. The main thing right now is go check out our. We've got an ESPN, one of the bracket challenges. Just search Off the Ball Network. The password is podcast, capital P. Join us. It's free entry. We're giving away prizes. We want to interact with you. We want to see, bragging rights and things like that. Things are going really good right now. Once again, all the guys are, doing really good work over there. But the biggest thing is right now, it's March Madness. We're loving it, and it's a great time of year, and it's been a couple years since we've had it. So yeah, just go check out Off the Ball Network and see all the fantastic stuff we're doing right now.
Absolutely. It seems like every day I hear about some other stuff that's going on. And I've got to admit, over the past couple of days, seeing some of the companies that we've partnered with or brought on as kind of partners or sponsors, I have to admit the one that I'm most excited about, and all the dads out there will understand this, is the Manscaped. Having them as kind of a partner that we're going to have over the next few weeks. So you'll hear more about that coming up in the next few weeks, but very excited about that. So kudos to you and Mo and Chris and all the guys that are putting in all the hard work and getting those relationships built.
Yeah, it's things are going really good. Things are happening. Big things are happening. They're happening really fast right now, and it's a really exciting time.
Well, we're just glad to be a part of it. All right, let's get back to our top 64 moment bracket. So we are in the Chris Jenkins region, which is appropriately named for the number 1 seed. The number 1 seed was Villanova. Chris Jenkins, you guys remember just a couple of years ago against UNC, the back and forth. He hits the 3-pointer at the buzzer to win the game for Villanova, their first title since I believe it was 85. That's going up against the 9 seed, which is Virginia's redemption. We talked about UMBC. We'll get to their bracket in just a minute. They upset Virginia 2 years ago, or I guess what would be now 3 years ago in the tournament as the 16 seed. Virginia comes back the next year, somehow escapes game after game after game, and ends up winning the national championship. So who you have, Chris Jenkins or Virginia getting the redemption?
I've still got Chris Jenkins, even though that Virginia run was amazing. So as if we were doing a top teams, I think I would probably take Virginia. But when we're talking about moments, which is what this bracket's about, which is, by the way, a fantastic bracket. You guys nailed it. I'm going with the Chris Jenkins shot. It just, you couldn't breathe. You know what I mean? And I combine it with the shot just before that to set up his shot. That was what we thought was going to be one of the greatest shots in NCAA history. And then Jenkins goes down and basically erases it. Just a wonderful ending to a game. And that's what you couldn't ask for more. The last game, of the season, the last second of the season, to come down to anything better than that. So I'm going with Chris Jenkins in this, even though that Virginia team had a heck of a run.
Yeah, I'm going to. I think with Jenkins as well, I think when you just factor in what was on the line there and they hit the buzzer beater for the national championship, I've got to go with Chris Jenkins as well.
It's almost like it was a fake. It was like it's if they made a movie about that, you would be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't believe that would have happened.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move down to the next matchup. We've got a 12 versus a 4. The 12 seed, and this is interesting because the 12 seed is UNLV and their dominance of the 1990 NCAA tournament, where they just ran away with basically the entire season, just a dominating team, against the 4 seed 1991, where Duke upends UNLV, ends that run for UNLV and Tarkanian and all those guys. So you've got the 12 seed UNLV being dominant, or the 4 seed Duke, huge upset, knocking them off the year after.
So this one hits really close to home because, if you're not old enough to remember, the Duke revenge that you have on there as the 4 seed was this is what started the Duke dynasty. That still is like, it's starting to fade now, but I mean, it was 20 years of like, oh my gosh, Duke again. But I can vividly remember that UNLV team and that UNLV run, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had watching basketball in my entire life. So I am giving the nod to the 12 seed UNLV, because that was still, it's to this day. I posted it today on Twitter. I didn't even realize this was going to be on here. Still one of the most amazing teams I've ever seen in sports history. As I don't know, as controversial as they were,
right?
The 12 seed UNLV moves on for me, but that's a hard pick. I'm not gonna lie to you, man.
It is a hard pick, and that's what I'm wrestling with. And I part of me wants to cheat and see who Kyle picks, but I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to go with UNLV too, just because they were so dominant. I mean, and anytime you've got Larry Johnson, aka Grandmama, on your team, I'm a big fan.
George Ackles, Anderson Hunt, can't. It was amazing.
Stacey Augman. I mean, those guys were just unreal.
Spider.
So I am moving UNLV on, and anytime you can knock off the Dukies, it's a good thing. So
yes.
All right, let's move to the next matchup, and this was one of our most highly contested first round matchups. So it was the 3 seed versus the 14. The 3 seed was Michael Jordan, kind of announcing himself on the national platform, getting the game winning basket for North Carolina when they knocked off Georgetown in the title game, and it was going against the 14 seed, which was no 2020 tournament. So not having a college basketball tournament last year. And it literally went down to one vote that bumped Michael Jordan's arrival past the 2020 tournament. So MJ arriving moved on to the round of 32, where it will face Richmond, the 6th seed. Now, Richmond, way back in the day, they were the first team to ever, first 15 seed to ever knock off a 2 seed. They beat Syracuse that year in the tournament as the 2 seed. So you've got MJ coming on board or Richmond. I'm going to vote first. When you're talking about the greatest of all time at anything, I think you've got to move them on. So I think it's such an iconic moment for Jordan. And then knowing what he did in his post UNC career and going on from that, I'm going MJ. What do you say?
So this was a tough one. I kind of remember that. It's fun. We went over to Indianapolis a few years ago, and they have the Indianapolis College Sports Hall of Fame, and you can go into their basketball court, and they have the iconic shots on there. And Jordan's shot is marked on the floor, and like I remember, me and my son sat there and shot it like 20 times or whatever. I'm as big as MJ fan as you can get, but the Richmond Spiders that year, when they won that game, like it's hard to explain now because so many things have happened in 30 years, but that was a huge, huge moment as to where, because we used to think up until that, it was like the first round, the Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, like upsets were like 10 seeds, like you were rooting for 11 seeds. Like there was no chance of anybody beyond that winning. Richmond wins that, like just like puts the country on notice, and it kind of changed the way like we look at the bracket since then. And then now we've had so many 15 seeds win. We've even had 16 win. But I'm giving it to the Richmond Spiders, even though it kills me. But nice. I'm going Richmond because I remember that was like just earth shattering stuff when it happened.
Nice. Yep, that's it absolutely was. And like you said, that had never happened before, and that was when there were upsets. It wasn't to that magnitude. So I'm going to Kyle's pick to break the tie, and Kyle has MJ moving on. So Jordan, the 3 seed, moves on to the round of 16, where it will face the winner of the 10-2 matchup. The 10 seed Northern Iowa beat Kansas back in the day. I believe it was 2010 when that happened. Kansas was one of the top teams in the country, and Northern Iowa knocked them off against the 2 seed. And this was, if you remember, really kind of way back in the day, Loyola Marymount. They were the running gun. They kind of started this whole running gun type offense where they scored 120, 130 points a game. And Bo Kimball, shortly after his teammate Hank Gathers passed away from a heart attack, Hank was left-handed, Bo was right-handed. And Bo gets up to the free throw line and shoots a free throw left-handed and sinks the free throw. I'm going to vote first. And they, if they haven't already written a movie script about this, they should. And so I'm going Bo Kimball with that free throw because that's just a huge emotional moment. And again, one of those kind of iconic moments you see throughout the tournament time.
Yeah, this is another, man. I'm totally with you right here. I got to go. The Northern Iowa team was a blast. Like, it was fun to watch. But, like, this is another one as far as, like, it was fun to watch the team. But, like, we were captivated at that time by that Bo Kimball moment. The Hank Gathers death was, like, really just shook us to our core. And then that Loyola Marymount team, not only that, they were so much fun to watch. And like you just touched on it, like 130 points a game. Like, what is going on out here? They had a pretty good run in that tournament too. And it's so like heartbreaking because with Hank, like they might have made an historic run. He was he didn't only pass away, like he was also like the best player on the team. Yeah. Like, and Bo's best. You like once again, like if you wrote the movie, people wouldn't believe it. I'm going Bo Kimball free throws all the way.
All right, so that region is set. We've got Chris Jenkins versus UNLV, and then the GOAT, MJ, announcing his arrival on the college basketball stage against Bo Kimball. So we are almost chalk, but we've got a 12 seed in that one as well. All right, we're going to go to the final region to get us to the round of 16. This is the UMBC region, and obviously appropriately named again for the 1 seed. The number 1 seed, UMBC, we already talked about it, knocked off the 1 seed, Virginia, 3 years ago, and not only knocked them off, but crushed them. They won by 20 points. It wasn't even a close game. Yeah. And they're going up against the 9 seed, which was back in 2017. Luke May for North Carolina hits a last-second shot to knock off Kentucky, send North Carolina to the to the Final Four. They went on to redeem themselves and win the national championship after losing the year before to Villanova. I'm going to vote first. I don't see how. I mean, Luke made that was a great shot. Don't get me wrong. But a 16 beating a 1, I just can't see how we could vote over that. But I'll toss it to you, Jeff, to see if you will do just that.
I totally agree. Once again, like the story of what Luke May did and coming off the year, like if you build all that up, but as far as one moment, like, any college basketball fan knows that like it was like this mythical thing that a 16 seed could ever win, like ever. And it's been kind of changed because, you have the play-in tourney and stuff, which is kind of took away from some of that because like a lot of the 2 16 seeds every year have already played a game coming in. So that's kind of odd. Doesn't matter. A 16 beating a 1 was something that I just touched on it with Richmond. when the 15 won, we thought that was crazy. The 16 was something that was never going to happen, and we watched it happen. And then it not only happened, but it wasn't luck. Like you said, it was a solid victory. So without a doubt, UMBC moves on in my bracket.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We got a comment from Kyle Castles, who normally co-hosts this show. Kyle says, "Fellas, I just got back to the hotel for the night." Kyle, I'm guessing that. Kyle, I'm guessing that means that you're in for some picks. So hopefully we'll be able to pull you up here in a minute. If we need you to do a tiebreaker, maybe we can get you to jump in and do just that as opposed to just reading your picks that you made earlier. All right, let's go to the next matchup here. You got the 5 seed versus the 4. 5 seed is Mario Chalmers, 2008, Memphis and Kansas. Memphis has a huge lead. Derrick Rose and company can't knock down their free throws.
One free throw.
Chalmers hits the 3 to send it to overtime, and Kansas wins against the 4 seed, who is Loyola. Sister Jean and company, if you guys remember just a few years back, went to the Final Four. They beat Miami, they beat Tennessee, they beat Nevada and Kansas State to make it back to the Final Four for the first time in a long time. You got Chalmers 3 or Loyola making the run to the Final Four.
Once again, teams, Loyola, that was fun. That was fun to watch, the build-up, the excitement. And I believe that Loyola team, they weren't even the only underdog to make a great run that year. It's been wild the last few years. The Chalmers shot was awesome. The end of that Kansas-Memphis game was awesome. It was heartbreaking as a Bulls fan. We got Rose, after that he was one of the, I won't say the first, but he was one of the big, officially one and dones. He's going to go to Memphis, then he's going to go to the NBA. So I kind of remember all that. That was a storyline. But the Chalmers 3, man, it was that. It was how you're supposed to play basketball, and it worked out. They had to kick out the fouls. That's why you foul. You got to make your free throws. Just everything culminated. Kansas did everything they could do to win that game, and they did it. You know what I mean? So I got Chalmers. I got Chalmers going through.
I do too. I think that was just again the stage that was on, to be able to hit that shot, and everything kind of lined up for him. And then, to Kansas's credit, they went on into overtime and took that momentum with them and ended up winning their Bill Self's first national championship. It was a fantastic game. It's kind of one of those games where you hated to see somebody lose if you didn't have a winning interest.
That's a great way to put it, man. A lot of these games, and as I get older, that becomes more and more a thing of I don't want to see any of these kids, lose or win, lose these games or whatever. And that was when that started, that started happening. That was tough, but just like the North Carolina Villanova game. But that's a good point.
Absolutely. Kyle chimes in and says, Sister Jean is better than everyone. Well, she very well may be, Kyle.
I don't argue with that.
We're not going to argue with the team chaplain, but we will. We're still going to have to give her the boot and move Kyle, Mario on.
The bracket wasn't greatest teams.
That's right. Or greatest mascots or whatever you want to call Sister Jean or whatever she is. No offense. All right, so let's move on. We got 2 more matchups to get through, and then we'll take off for the night. So the number 3 seed, if you guys remember, this is a huge moment. 1993 Final Four national championship game. You got North Carolina and Michigan. Michigan had the Fab Five. They really kind of were the trendsetters for a while against North Carolina, Dean Smith, and that whole group that he had there. Michigan's got the ball. Chris Webber is about to go out of bounds, turns around, gives this signal for a timeout, and they don't have a timeout. Get a technical. North Carolina goes on to win the national championship. That's going up against the 11 seed, which is Rip Hamilton. Most people remember Rip from his days with the Detroit Pistons, but back in the day, Rip was there. I believe it was 1998. For UConn, made a game-winning buzzer beater against Washington in the NCAA tournament. I will go first. Only one of these is a moment like you just would that signifies the response that you just did, where you just like, oh, I can't believe that, and that was Weber's timeout. So I'm going Weber's timeout in this one.
That's a good one. I can once again, I watched that team closely. I talked about it today. The Fab Five. This was the second year of the Fab Five. The year before that, they lost to Duke. changed the world. Like there's basketball is not the same, and I don't mean that in a negative way or whatever. It just it just changed the course of basketball. What an amazing run. Though I despise them as an Ohio State fan, it was tough. We had great teams then too that are just like erased in history now. But that Rip Hamilton shot and the run that he went on, I'm actually giving Rip the nod on this one because I remember that it was at the foul line, basically kind of fading away, and then Rip went on to continue to do that for another 15 years, or whatever. So like Weber's was more like that game was like, but the actual game, like if you take away like the Fab Five and everything, the game actually became like anticlimactic. Like, oh, we got this great game. And then he calls that and you're like, wait, that's it. It's over. Like we just talked about some historic games that like that came right down to the last shot. And that took that away from us. Cause we were slightly pulling for Michigan on that one because of that. And then that happens. And it kind of like, it was a big moment, but it took away from it. So I'm going with Rip because like, I can remember watching it. I can remember being excited. I can remember, everything about it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, UConn just has a lot of these moments. I mean, not necessarily like
Rip and
Kemba. I mean, it's there's a lot of them. And you think of Ray Allen, you think of the run they went on in 2014 where they were the 8 seed, where they played Kentucky, the 9 seed in the national championship. I mean, they've just had a lot of moments. They're kind of one of the underrated kind of blue blood teams out there.
Yeah, that's a great call, man. Like they really are like overlooked for the impact that they've had on the sport.
Absolutely. All right. So it goes down to a tiebreaker, and I looked at it before I was going to let Kyle make up his mind, but then Kyle just commented and says, okay, Jeff changed my mind. I'm picking Rip 2 now. So Kyle did change his mind. He did have Weber's TO in the notes. So Kyle changing his mind, and we will move Rip, the 11 seed, Rip Hamilton, moving on to the Sweet 16. I like the upsets. I was afraid this thing was going to go chalk. And so I'm glad to see that it did not. So Rip moves on. All right, we got the last matchup of the night. The number 7 seed, Syracuse and Carmelo winning the title. Melo was kind of that really first one and done that won a title.
You're right. I gave it to Derrick Rose, but Melo like set the stage.
Yes, and that was really, like you said, it set the stage for the one and done, and the fact that they were able to win a championship and then him, go on after that. That's going up against the 2 seed, which is Nova again, Villanova in this, the 1985 championship game versus Georgetown. Nova, huge underdogs, probably the biggest underdog in championship game history, and they pulled off the shocker, knocking off Georgetown. I'll go first. This is a tough one because Melo, the run that Syracuse went on there was really impressive. And the fact that really kind of set the tone for the one and done era has significance. But what I just said about this is probably, if not one of the greatest upsets in national championship game history. I've got to go with the Wildcats, and I'll go Villanova. What about you, Jeff?
I totally agree, man. The Syracuse run was great. I believe that was the kid's name, the McNamara or something like that, was the guard. Like Jerry, I think his name was Jerry.
Yep.
I was happy for Boeheim. Finally, the zone defense paid off for Syracuse and all that. It was a great run. Once again, this isn't about great runs or great teams. Once again, great bracket. That 85 title for Nova, I can't like describe to people enough. Like this was the time in college basketball to where seniors made it to their senior year, and like you got to see teams evolve into what players were going to be. So like imagine Carmelo was a senior, or Jordan got to his senior year. Like that's what we're talking about here. That Nova 85 game takes it because it was the best shooting performance, I believe, still to this day in the history of like the tournament. Like they shot like 90% from the field. Like it was just one of those. They caught lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
Was that the best team ever? No, by no means. But did they get hot and play their best at the right time for 6 games? Yes, absolutely. I give it the 85 title because once again, that's another building block to my life as 10-year-old Jeff. That's how I grew up on college basketball, and Georgetown was another one of those mythical figures, at that point with John Thompson and those guys. So I give it to Nova.
There we go. All right. So Nova moves on. So we are down to 16. So let me recap these really quickly. So we've got NC State and Jimmy V, George Mason making their big run, Ewing versus Hakeem, Magic v. Bird. That'll be a great Sweet 16 matchup right there.
It's a hard out. They're a hard out.
That is. Then the next bracket, you've got Chris Jenkins and Villanova versus UNLV. And then MJ announcing his arrival to college basketball against Bo Kimball. UMBC, the 16 over the 1 versus Chalmers 3 to send Kansas to the title. Rip Hamilton's game winner against Washington versus Villanova's upset of Georgetown in 85. And then the last region, Leitner's shot versus Mateen Cleave's dance. And Bryce Drew versus Ole Miss versus Texas Western in their 1955, not only starting 5, but winning the national championship and really kind of changing college basketball for the better for the rest of history. So, my goodness, what a Sweet 16 that's going to be. And we'll finish that up over the course of the next weeks. Jeff, man, thanks so much for coming on and doing this with me. This was a blast.
Thank you, man. This is one of the best brackets ever. And I'm glad that I got to be on here because I watched almost every one of these teams play. Like obviously the 1955 team, I didn't, but you're right about how important that was. The memories you brought back today and, just like, making me go back and watch some tape and things like that and highlights and stuff. It was my pleasure for sure.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to take the Sweet 16. We'll be back next week, and Kyle and I will go through a little bit of that. And then we're going to put it back out there for the fans to vote via Twitter to get us from the Elite Eight to the Final Four. And then we'll kind of go through the Final Four, and we'll probably get some off the ball guys to help us over the course of the next couple of weeks and whittle it down to the number one moment in NCAA tournament history, which I am
this is going to be controversial. I'm telling you right now.
Oh, without a doubt.
I can already tell you that I'm going to do a show just based on your results.
Nice.
Like there's no win. Like no matter who wins, it's controversial. I can tell you that right now.
And I love it because that prompts people to get into it, and that's what we wanted to do. So, Jeff,
bracket ever.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for all your input tonight. And this has been Dad's Watching Sports. We'll see you next week. Kyle, take care. We'll see you back, buddy. And you guys all have a good one. We'll see you again next week on Dad's Watching Sports.